This video was created in 2014 from old 16mm movie film and photos mostly taken in the 1930s and 1940s by amateur photographers. Much of the film was faded, cracked, and in generally poor condition. Consequently, the production is not of high professional quality. It can best be appreciated by comparing it with the work of historians and archaeologists who search for remnants of information and relics in order to develop a knowledge and understanding of people and events of past years. It has been supplemented with still photographs, both old and new, that help tell the story. Faith Mission began as a children's home, founded in 1923 in Tampa, Florida, by Reverend Fred C. Markert and Mrs. Cora Reynolds Markert. Fred and Cora read their Bible. They read, "The just shall live by faith," and "Ask and you shall receive," and "The Lord will provide." And they believed it, and lo and behold, it proved true. Faith Mission became nationally known for the unique belief that faith in God could provide all earthly needs. It was supported entirely by voluntary contributions. No appeals for funds were made, no endowments were established, and no public funds were used. The building in Tampa was an old cigar factory located on the street. There were no lawn or playground facilities. When the number of children had increased and better facilities were needed, they moved to Crystal Beach, Florida, in Pinellas County in 1928. Crystal Beach is a small community located on the Gulf Coast between Tarpon Springs and Palm Harbor. At Crystal Beach, they rented a vacant 3-story frame hotel building for $100 a month. The building was the former Blue Heron Hotel, built in 1917. It had 30 rooms, including a large living room, kitchen, and a large dining room that could be used for many purposes. A distinguishing exterior feature was a large wraparound porch. It also provided over an acre of playground area. It provided much better accommodations for the 27 children, Fred and Cora Markert, their 2 grown children, Irene and Margaret, and other adult workers who made the move. The building was located on the north side of Ontario Avenue, between North Mayo and Gulf Drive. The address was 250 Gulf Drive. With more space available, and with financial support improving, more children could be accepted. Every effort was made to raise the children as a family. The children called Fred Papa and Cora Mama. They called the older daughter Dowdy and the younger daughter Shug, just as a regular family would. The arrival of a new child could generate a lot of excitement. One such event shows Fred and Shug arriving with a new baby. This photo from the early 1930s shows 37 children seated on the front steps of the building with the 4 Markert family adults. Later pictures taken around the mid-1930s show 66 children with 13 adults. A sunroom across the full width of the building on the 2nd floor made an excellent nursery. With outdoor space now available, the children had plenty of play area, both on the block of the Mission Building and in Live Oak Park, a community park in front of the building.
Pictures from the early 1930s show some of the outdoor activity. Of course, there were times when playtime resulted in scrapes, cuts, and bruises. The older children learned to help care for the younger children. Another advantage to the Crystal Beach location was easy access to the Gulf, which was just across the road from the Mission Building. Water activities were now available. Outdoor activity and nourishing meals created healthy children. In all these pictures, none appear to be obese or undernourished. The dining room was equipped with tables for 6 to provide a family atmosphere and adequate supervision. Fred was once asked why he did not eliminate laundry problems by painting the tables gray or covering them with oilcloth. and why he did not lessen dish breakage by using enamelware. He replied, "I never was brought up that way, and I do not intend our children should be raised on gray paint or oilcloth." At the end of the day, the children were ready for bed after all the outdoor playtime. Education was an important part of the children's day. The founders and many of the adult workers had teaching education or experience. The children were homeschooled at least through the elementary grades. The teachers, as with all the workers, served without pay. In later years, when they began to attend public schools, most of them entered at or above their grade level.
For several years, from about 1935 to 1942, the county allowed Faith Mission to use a vacant school building in Wall Springs. They also donated an old school bus to transport the children to the school on Highway US 19, about 1¼ miles away. The beautiful arches marking the entrance to Crystal Beach at the intersection of Crystal Beach Avenue and the highway are now gone. Today, the highway is a busy 3-lane road marked as U.S. Highway Alternate 19 and known as Palm Harbor Boulevard. In later years, the old school building at 3419 U.S. Highway Alternate 19 became a restaurant called the Old Schoolhouse Restaurant. It operated for a number of years but closed in 2013. An article posted inside the restaurant mistakenly stated that children slept in the attic of the building. However, that was never true. Faith Mission used the building only as a school. In 2014, the restaurant was reopened as the Ale House. Extensive exterior remodeling was done, and the building lost its identity as a schoolhouse. By the mid-1930s, garage space was needed to house the large bus and some other vehicles that had been acquired. Some garage space was rented and some was donated. In 1937, a donation of $150 and some volunteer labor permitted the erection of a 2-story building large enough for the bus and 3 or 4 other vehicles. The second floor provided much-needed storage space. The building was erected in the 500 block of Ontario Avenue on the north side. In the following years, it became known simply as the Barn.
Music, both vocal and instrumental, was also an important part of the children's education. Every child learned to play an instrument. A 30-piece orchestra called the Little Symphony sometimes performed in the Mission or in Live Oak Park. They were often invited to perform in churches or other locations where they played for audiences as large as several hundred. One of the earliest buildings in Crystal Beach was the Crystal Inn. It was built before 1917 by Mr. Rebstock, one of the founders of Crystal Beach. Room rates at that time were $8 to $10 per week. Faith Mission acquired the building in the early 1940s and used it initially as housing for the older boys. They always referred to it as the Inn. It was and still is located at 520 Crystal Beach Avenue. Another early building in Crystal Beach was constructed as the personal home of Dr. J.D. Hanby, president of the Crystal Beach Development Company. An early picture shows Dr. Hanby standing in the doorway of the front porch. Faith Mission bought the house in 1942 after the death of Dr. Hanby. It was first used as housing for the older girls. The house is located at 612 Pennsylvania Avenue. The property also included a garage apartment. Other properties acquired during the early 1940s were 2 small cottages on North Mayo Street, between Crystal Beach Avenue and Ontario Avenue. After moving to Crystal Beach, Fred and Cora saw that there was no church or place of worship in the community. They opened the mission and held Sunday afternoon services there for a while, but as the number of children increased, it soon became apparent that space was not adequate. They prayed and planned for a place of worship in the community. In 1937, plans were drawn for a small church they called a tabernacle. The building would be 45 by 85 feet. Money, property, and materials would be needed. Over the next 10 years, property, stone, a grand piano, and many interior furnishings were donated. A groundbreaking ceremony was held, and construction began in 1946. The tabernacle was completed in 1947. Services were held on Sunday afternoons with visiting ministers. The YWCA of Tampa had built a girls' camp in Wall Springs, but it burned down. Dr. J.D. Hanby and Dr. A.D. Powers of the Crystal Beach Development Company offered waterfront property at the western end of Florida Avenue, so the Y rebuilt there. However, the girls did not like it because it had no pool, so the Y closed the property and moved elsewhere. A hurricane in the 30s caused some water problems and damage. In 1942, Faith Mission bought the property, consisting of Seaside Hall and 5 cabins. The property was first used as recreational area. After the purchase of Seaside Hall, an outreach program to have weekly Bible clubs among the Grove workers in the surrounding rural area was started and conducted by Mrs. Louise Wilcoxon and Evelyn Adler. Bible clubs began in the Groves, where roads were poor and needs were great. Bibles, tracts, food, clothing, toys, etc. were distributed to over 75 families and 120 children the first year. Families were visited, and Bible classes were held in the Groves for those who were not able to attend or had never been to regular places of worship. Children were brought to Crystal Beach for classes or other special events. One such occasion was on Easter Sunday, when an Easter service was held at the tabernacle and baskets contributed by a church in Tampa were distributed. Other occasions involved bringing children to the mission for classes or recreation. Sometimes they would be given items to use, such as books, toys, candy, and personal care items. It often required several buses and automobiles to transport the large groups. The camp became known as Camp Famisca, derived from Faith Mission Camp. In the summer, camps were held for both boys and girls. The camps were for 10 days and were completely free of any charges. Activities were designed to appeal to both groups. Faith Mission sold the camp property in 1973, and it became a part of the Point Seaside development. Private residences now occupy the property at the end of Florida Boulevard.
The number of children cared for peaked at about 87 around 1940 or 41. Eventually, in the later 40s, the children began to move away as they left to go to school, work, or military service. Cora passed away in 1939, and a year or so later, Fred remarried to Miss Margaret Roberts, who had been a worker at Faith Mission for several years. Part of an old movie shows Fred, Margaret, and Dowdy with several of the last remaining children on a casual Sunday afternoon. Fred passed away in 1948, but he lived long enough to see the beginning of other work he had wanted to see started. Now that some of the properties were not needed for children, a missionary rest home was started in 1946. Missionaries home on furlough could come and stay without any charge. Bible conferences were scheduled and held during the winter months of the late 1940s. Noted speakers of the area came to hold services and classes. Guests could be accommodated overnight for the conferences. A sign posted on Highway 19 announced these services. Faith Mission entered its last phase of operation in the early 1950s with the establishment of a retirement home for lower-income elderly persons. The aging three-story frame Blue Heron Faith Mission building was demolished in 1951. It was replaced by a new 10-room, one-story masonry building on the same site in 1953. The new building was called the Sunset Lodge and was designed for the elderly retired. The Margaret's younger daughter, Shug, had stayed with the family and worked at Faith Mission after the move to Crystal Beach. In 1933, she married Reverend August Bredemeyer and left the mission to serve with him as he pastored churches in Florida and Chicago. They returned in 1957 so August could serve as administrator to Faith Mission and minister to the small congregation of the Tabernacle. In 1958, the Tabernacle was organized and chartered as the non-denominational Crystal Beach Community Church. Faith Mission deeded the property to the church in 1964. Over the years, the church has grown. A fellowship hall was added in 1976, and an educational addition was built in 2009. August retired after 17 years as pastor of the church in 1973, but continued as administrator of Faith Mission until 1989. Crystal Beach Community Church has continued to serve the community with Christian services and activities under the leadership of several pastors. It is affiliated with the International Council of Community Churches. Faith Mission erected 2 new buildings on North Mayo Street in the 1960s to increase the number of apartments available for retiree rental. August retired as administrator of Faith Mission in 1989, and Charles Altman was appointed as the new administrator. Charles was one of the boys raised at the mission. Charles served until 1997. For a short time in the mid-1990s, Faith Mission and the Crystal Beach Community Church entered into a joint management agreement, and the church helped with both management and maintenance of the properties. During that time, the church requested the use of the Crystal Inn for a youth center. Many volunteers and businesses donated time and materials to renovate the building and operate a center for youth of the community. In 1998, the center opened. The church later discontinued financial support of the youth center, and the center reorganized as a 501c3 nonprofit corporation and continues to operate. Due to higher operating and maintenance costs in later years, and when family members were no longer available to manage the day-to-day business, the board of directors of Faith Mission determined that the most viable option was to sell the properties and establish a fund within the Pinellas Community Foundation. A review of the properties shows how they have changed and the effect they now have on the appearance of the community. The first property to be sold was the barn. It was torn down and the property sold. Today, a private residence occupies the lot. The cottages on North Mayo Street were removed and the property sold for private residence. The triplex and duplex on North Mayo were sold and still remain much as before in 2013. The Hamby House that served as housing for the older girls and missionary rest home had also been the residence of Reverend Bredemeyer, as he served as pastor of the church and administrator of Faith Mission. It was sold in 2000 and has had many owners since then. The garage apartment was removed and the property was subdivided. In 2013, the house was for sale again, and a new residence was under construction next door. The Crystal Inn Youth Center was not sold but was transferred to the Pinellas County Foundation. If the property ever ceases to be used as a youth center, the foundation can sell or use it as desired. The youth center now has a working relationship with the Palm Harbor YMCA. Activities have expanded to include other events for youth and adults. The building is referred to as the Beach House. In 2000, the last piece of property to be sold was the block containing the Sunset Lodge. This block that had contained the Blue Heron Faith Mission building and Sunset Lodge was purchased by Pinellas County. The county removed the section of Ontario Avenue between the block and Live Oak Park, thereby doubling the size of the park. One of the unique features of the park has always been the moss-draped oak trees that are twisted and bent by years of winds blowing off the Gulf. Another feature of the park is the stone fountain that has been there since the early days. It originally had water flowing out the top and down the sides into the pool containing goldfish, and the children played around it. The pool has been filled in with dirt, so there are no more goldfish. Although the top saucer has been broken off, it remains an eye-catching structure that is a point of interest in the park. Some newer residents who were unaware of the history of the park speculated it was some type of Indian mound. In the 1930s, a rock fish pond was located on the east side of the mission building. It was an active pond with water flowing out of the top and down the rocks into the pond below. The children loved to catch tadpoles in the water. Only a pile of rubble marks the location today where the fish pond had been. It waits patiently for someone to restore its former beauty. The county installed a historical marker near the location of the old fish pond. A dedication was held May 17, 2003, when the marker was unveiled. The text on the marker is as follows: Site of the Blue Heron Hotel and Faith Mission. The Blue Heron Hotel was built in 1917. Reverend Fred C. and Cora Markert established Faith Mission in Tampa as a children's home in 1923. In 1928, it moved to Crystal Beach and occupied the Blue Heron. Faith Mission grew to peak occupancy of 87 children. During World War II, servicemen on coastal patrol duty were invited to sleep in the building at night. Faith Mission was a Christian organization supported entirely by voluntary contributions. In 1951, the Blue Heron was raised, and by 1953, a 10-room, one-story masonry building had been completed for use as a retirement home. Pinellas County purchased the site from Faith Mission in 2000, and it became part of Live Oak Park. At the end of any clear day, the view of the sunset over the Gulf attracts a crowd to the beach. People come from all the surrounding area to enjoy spectacular colors of the sky and water in the waning hours of the day. It is a scene that provides a tranquil ending to the day. The common theme that persists through all these scenes and all the years of Faith Mission is faith. There were lean times and difficult years, but faith tied it all together. As the founders read their Bibles and believed, God did provide. Not mentioned but equally important are the unknown thousands of people who were an essential part of Faith Mission history. The workers who served without pay to teach and care for the children, and the donors who contributed pennies or thousands of dollars for the support of the mission. All were led, knowingly or unknowingly, by the unseen hand of God to accomplish what would have been otherwise impossible. All monies derived from the sale of Faith Mission properties was placed in the Faith Mission Christian Fund within the Pinellas County Community Foundation. Grants for the fund are made annually to organizations providing services to the youth and elderly of the area. As the sun sets over Crystal Beach and the waters of the Gulf at the end of the day, so also did Faith Mission in Crystal Beach come to an end. And yet, As the moon provides light to the darkness after the sun has set, perhaps the Faith Mission Christian Fund will provide faith, hope, and light to others in need in the area. For information on donations to or grants from the fund, contact the Pinellas Community Foundation, Clearwater, Florida, or visit www.pinellasccf.org. More information can be found by searching the internet for Faith Mission, Crystal Beach, Florida. However, there are some inaccurate statements on the internet. This video was prepared and reviewed by the last remaining family members and children raised at Faith Mission who actually knew the founders personally. It also incorporates first-person information from documents written by people who were there at the time. Therefore, we believe the information contained herein to be the most accurate that can be found. Thank you for watching.